Tonight on NewsCenter. In remembrance of those who sacrificed their lives protecting the country, particularly the West Sea, President Park sends out a strong message to North Korea. Repeated provocations will only lead to self-destruction. Internal feud on who will represent each party in the upcoming general election continues to rock the nation's political parties, even as deadline looms for candidate registration. And as a massive manhunt continues in Belgium for those behind Tuesday's deadly terrorist attacks, new reports emerge that authorities have arrested a French national suspected of planning another attack, a plan in an advanced stage. NewsCenter begins right now. It is 10 a.m. in Buenos Aires, 2 p.m. in Brussels, and 10 on a Friday night here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to our viewers all across the globe. You're watching Arirang NewsCenter. Now, North Korea's reckless provocations will only lead to its self-destruction, warns President Park as she reaffirmed her commitment to boosting defense readiness against any North Korea threats. The commander-in-chief was speaking at a ceremony held in remembrance of those who sacrificed their lives safeguarding the nation's western sea border on this newly observed West Sea Defense Day. Our top office correspondent Song Ji-sun has more on the president's message to the people at this inaugural event.
While paying tribute to the fallen soldiers who died protecting the West Sea from North Korean provocations, President Park stressed that Seoul will stand strong against any threats from the north and that its reckless provocations will only lead to self-destruction. The president said she will solicit the wisdom of world leaders at the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington next week to resolve the nuclear issue and nuclear terror threats from North Korea.
국제사회가 북한의 핵 개발과 도발을 더 이상 용납할 수 없다는 단호한 의지를 결집하고 있는 지금이 북한 정권을 변화시킬 수 있는 기회입니다. 여기서 우리가 또다시 물러선다면 북한의 핵 능력 고도화로 한반도에 돌이킬 수 없는 재앙이 닥치고 경제는 마비될 것입니다.
She said that North Korea is more isolated than ever after the recent comprehensive international sanctions, and added that the chances of additional provocations are higher than ever. Calling on the military to be on full alert, the president also stressed the importance of national unity.
국가 안보를 지키는 길에는 이념도 정파도 있을 수 없습니다. 대한민국을 지키는 가장 큰 힘은 국민의 하나된 마음과 애국심에서 나옵니다. 우리나라가 오늘의 안보 위기를 슬기롭게 극복하고 한반도 평화통일 시대를 열어갈 수 있도록 국민 여러분께서 하나로 힘을 모아주시기 바랍니다.
Reiterating her message on the need for heightened security conditions, President Park also attended the opening of police agency in northern Gyeonggi-do province, urging them to ensure the safety of residents living in areas within close proximity to North Korea. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, more on Korea's maiden West Sea Defense Day. Every year from this year forth, Korea will mark the occasion on the fourth Friday of March. Our Kwon Jang-ho traces back to the events leading up to this tribute.
On the evening of the fourth Friday of March in 2010, a North Korean submarine fired a torpedo at the Cheonan warship off the west coast of the peninsula in the West Sea. The attack came without warning or reason, killing 46 of the 104 men on board. After several investigations by South Korean and international authorities, it was determined that the sinking had been caused by a North Korean torpedo.
We can confirm that the recovered torpedo fragments were made in North Korea.
North Korea denied responsibility, but 8 months later, openly fired around 170 artillery shells and rockets at Yeonpyeong Island, killing 2 soldiers and 2 civilians. Yeonpyeong was also another location of a flashpoint in 2002. North Korean ships crossed the maritime border between the 2 Koreas near the island. The South Korean Navy warned the North Korean ships to turn back, but they began firing instead. 6 South Korean soldiers were killed, and over a dozen North Korean men also died. Incidents like these have led to the designation of the West Sea Defense Day in South Korea. It is a day to commemorate the lives lost to North Korean aggression and reinforces Seoul's commitment to defending the area. Recent provocations by the North have highlighted the dangers that the peninsula still faces. But this day is for celebrating the bravery of the lost soldiers and the sacrifices made for their country. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
As the first West Sea Defense Day was marked on land, at sea, a South Korea-U.S. joint naval drills were conducted, showcasing the rock-hard alliance between the two countries. Our national defense correspondent Kim Hyun-bin takes us to the West Sea.
A North Korean submarine has been detected. Soon after, the South Korean anti-submarine Lynx helicopter is dispatched. The helicopter drops a deepening sonar to find the exact location of the submarine. Once the location is pinpointed, South Korean destroyers drop several depth charges and blow up the submarine. In retaliation, the enemy Special Operation Forces conducted naval infiltration. Targets are locked, and South Korea and U.S. vessels fire off heavy artillery and sink Pyongyang's air cushion vehicles. This is all part of a joint naval drill between Seoul and Washington being held in the West Sea.
We have inherited the will of our fellow soldiers who lost their lives defending the West Sea. If North Korea provokes again, we will sternly respond with our firepower.
The exercise was conducted marking the first West Sea Defense Day, and similar exercises were also held in the East and South Seas. A total of 28 vessels took part in the drills, including the USS Fitzgerald, along with South Korea's destroyer Sejong the Great. Against the backdrop of the joint naval exercises, the two allies pledged to secure the maritime sovereignty of South Korea and to maintain the highest readiness to counter any threat or provocation from the North. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Angry rhetoric and heightened military readiness summarize the current state of inter-Korean relations in recent weeks. Now, more of those verbal attacks came from Pyongyang today, claiming it had trained its military to attack Seoul's presidential office. South Korea says the North has its own reasons behind those bellicose words. Connie Kim reports.
North Korea has threatened to destroy South Korean government organizations and forcefully reunify the two Koreas. The latest threats came from North Korea's Korean Central News Agency on Friday, as a leader of the communist state Kim Jong-un supervised the regime's largest long-range artillery exercises to date. Kim has reportedly ordered his military to be ready for combat so it can ruthlessly carry out an attack at any moment. According to pictures released by the Dodong-Sinmun, the North's official state-run newspaper, a target is shown seemingly looking like an island in flames from an attack, and some 100 long-range artilleries that are capable of targeting Seoul and other metropolitan areas in South Korea. Pyongyang has upped its bellicose rhetoric to its highest level during the annual Seoul-Washington joint military drills, following the UN's heaviest sanctions on the regime early this month. The South Korean Unification Ministry believes that two intentions lie behind the North's continuous provocations and words of threat.
On the external front, Pyongyang is trying to give the perception that international sanctions on North Korea have weakened to change around the current situation. Internally, Kim Jong-un may be trying to consolidate his regime.
North Korea forged ahead with shooting short and mid-range missiles and test-firing its multiple rocket launchers 4 times since it fired a long-range ballistic missile a month after its 4th nuclear test. North Korea is expected to continue its belligerent rhetoric and provocations during the Seoul-Washington military drills. But it remains to be seen whether North Korea can use tactics such as the firing of missiles as a negotiating tool against South Korea and the U.S. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Well, now for a more in-depth look into the newly observed West Sea Defense Day and its significance, we're joined live in the studio by Kim Seok-hyun, professor of North Korean Studies at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, welcome to the program.
Hello. Yeah.
Before we get into anything else, why don't we first touch upon the significance of this newly observed West Sea Defense Day?
Well, I think we should we shall commemorate, this kind of event before, today, because it's the first anniversary. Although it happened 6 years ago, our president attended the ceremony, and the whole new ceremony. It's just a new thing. I think we shall do this all the way back to the first stance. It's like 6 years ago we shall commemorate this kind of thing.
Right, and by that you mean the sinking of the warship Cheonan 6 years ago.
Right.
Tomorrow, March 26th, marks the 6th anniversary, like you said, of North Korea's torpedoing of South Korean warship Cheonan. President Park sent out a very strong message to the North today. What is your assessment of the current inter-Korean relations, the situation here on the peninsula?
I think it's one of the critical points in our history. Although we don't need to be intimidated by North Korean threat, we share a lot on the current situation, and we should be ready, for North Korean threat. So our president and our people all together, to defend our nation against North Korean threat.
So although we should not be in fear of North Korean threats, we should be ready for any kind of provocations by the North. Now, South Korea has maintained a very strong stance against North Korea recently. In fact, a stronger stance than ever really before, especially highlighted by the suspension of the inter-Korean industrial complex in Kaesong. In your view, is the administration heading towards the right direction?
My answer to this question is basically yes. But before I answer this question, I just want to ask to you, what else we can do on the current situation? You remember the North Korea, I don't know, it's hydrogen bomb or atomic bomb, but it just test. The nuclear test.
A nuclear test, which
on January.
It claimed to be an H-bomb, but experts think otherwise. Yes.
Right. Anyway, they did test on January, and then February, they did some kind of missile thing like ICBM. They also arguing that it's very successful. And the threatening from the North is becoming, real and real. So at this point, it's a little bit different from the past. In the past, the threatening is not really real, but it's becoming more and more serious. So now, what else we can do? I think it's kind of Maginot line. We shall do something about this.
Right. So what you're saying is there was really nothing left for South Korea to do, other than really shutting down the industrial complex. Because of threats from North Korea, provocations, the level was increasing.
Right.
But despite a series of multilateral and unilateral sanctions on North Korea that have really been deemed unprecedented in strength, North Korea continues to launch these provocative actions and verbal attacks, which really seems that North Korea is defiant. What do you think the North Korean regime is thinking?
I think what they really want to do is to protect Kim dynasty in North Korea, and Kim Jong-un's, comes first before everything, including their people's life. So they do what they can do, but from our standpoint, we cannot put up with anymore. We shall do something about it, and I think from this point, Kim Jong-un's mind is just so unpredictable that he himself do not know what's going on. One time he want to have a dialogue with the South and the United States, and then next time he want to remove all the enemy from the earth. So it's like, like this. That's why we need to be ready for anything possible we can think of.
Right. So we need to be on alert because of the high unpredictability of the North Korean regime and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, I think is what you're saying. Now, global leaders are set to meet in Washington later this month for the Nuclear Security Summit. And although it has not been made official, regional experts think that there could be bilateral and trilateral summits between Seoul and Washington, Seoul, Beijing, and Seoul, Washington, and Beijing on the sidelines. If those summits are realized, what are some of the key goals that South Korea should try to achieve through these summits?
Since the division of the Korea to Korea, our Korean people have go through all kind of trouble so far, and the basic reason for our trouble is, there was division was there. Otherwise, if division was not there, then, we don't need to pay all kinds of trouble, right? So from now on, our president and our government and our people put together and then to resolve the division of to Korea, and we want to have our unification in this country sooner than later. So to having unification, we need to make some kind of strategical direction, and we put this kind of goal in front of all the world leaders, and then make them effort together for this goal.
Right, so a path towards unification of the Korean Peninsula. All right, Kim Seok-kyung, Professor of North Korean Studies at Ewha Women's University, thank you indeed for speaking with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, countdown to the April 13th general election has begun. Candidate registrations closed as of 6 p.m. this Friday evening. Political parties and candidates running in the upcoming election are now set to hit the campaign trail. Our political correspondent Ji Myung-gil has the details.
Candidate registration for the April 13th general election finished up on Friday, with the ruling Saenuri Party, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, and the newly minted People's Party looking to officially launch campaign committees as soon as possible. The Saenuri Party was thrown into a chaos as rival factions clashed over candidate nominations. But after Friday's Supreme Council meeting, the ruling party finalized nominating all the candidates for the 253 constituencies nationwide, while leaving 3 controversial districts vacant. Saenuri Party Secretary General Hwang Jin-ah announced that the inter-party feuds are now over.
As of today, all internal power struggles have been resolved. We will now work towards fostering unity and leading the party to victory in the April elections for the success of President Park Geun-hye's administration.
Meanwhile, the main opposition Minju Party's interim leader Kim Jong-un took a step towards getting the party back on its feet by trying to ease internal tensions. Kim promised to back up the party's candidates by supporting their campaigns in order to come out victorious in the April polls. The ruling party wants to retain the majority of seats in the National Assembly, while the Minju Party has defined the election as a referendum on the Park administration and its failures. Meanwhile, the newly formed People's Party is vowing to change the 2-party system into a 3-party system and is seeking to garner 20% of the vote. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, for the first time in 20 years, Koreans heading to the polls will have 3 major parties to vote for instead of 2. According to our Shin Se-min, this is just one of the many factors that make this year's election stand out from previous ones.
3 negotiating political parties will be on the ballot paper when Koreans enter polling stations on April 13th. It'll mark the first time since the mid-1990s that more than 2 will be in the running. They are the ruling Saenuri Party, which holds a majority of 146 seats in the 300-seat National Assembly, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, with 102, and the minor opposition People's Party, which was recently bestowed the status of a negotiating bloc, with 21 seats. Korea saw its last multi-party election in 1996, when 4 parties went head-to-head. That's also when the opposition blocs stopped the then-ruling New Korea Party, led by former late President Kim Young-sam, from securing a majority. But this year's race isn't expected to have a similar outcome.
The infighting within the parties during the candidate nomination process, especially within the Saenuri Party and the Minju Party of Korea, caused a rift between supporters of the individual parties, but I don't expect voters to switch allegiances.
The nomination feud in the ruling party revolved around lawmakers loyal to President Park Geun-hye and those not in her faction, like Yoo Sung-min, who left the party on Wednesday to run as an independent. The turmoil was not limited to the ruling party, though. The infighting between the faction loyal to the late President Roh Moo-hyun and those not allied with Roh put a strain on the main opposition Minju Party. The party is being run by interim leader Kim Jong-in, who stepped up after pro-Roh member Moon Jae-in resigned as chairman under pressure from lawmakers unhappy with his leadership. The minor opposition People's Party lost a key member of its leadership, Election Committee Chair Kim Han-gil, after a conflict with party founder and co-chair An Chol-soo about whether to embrace the Minju Party's proposal to join forces to win the election.
Experts say this year's election should be one to watch, as a number of factors like the country's delayed electoral map and the hotly contested nomination process have spiced things up. One thing for sure, though, the results will be a good indicator of how the party's presidential candidates will do in the big one next year. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Well, Korea's gross national income per capita dropped last year for the first time in 6 years. The central bank cites the trend of a weaker local currency as a main reason for the decline. But concerns remain as the current economic conditions still reflect sagging growth prospects. Our Hwang Ji-hye with the digits.
It looks like Korea's long targeted goal of topping the $30,000 mark in per capita gross national income will have to sit on the back burner for yet another year. The Bank of Korea says the country's income per person last year stood at $27,340, down 2.6% from a year ago. It's the first decline since the country was pummeled by the global financial crisis in 2009. The central bank attributes the drop to the weakening Korean won against the greenback that dragged down the dollar converted value.
The won on average weakened 7.4% against the dollar last year. So you can say the drop in GNI per capita in dollar terms has everything to do with the exchange rate.
In the local currency, the gross national income per capita did rise more than 4%, but it looks hard for Korea to completely brush aside concerns about growth losing its puff. The economy grew 2.6% last year, marking the slowest pace of expansion in 3 years. And forecasts suggest Korea will fail to expand in the 3% range again this year, facing a plunge in exports for the 14th straight month now and languishing domestic demand.
Recently, uncertainties over growth have been surging. We're seeing a clear trend of households increasing savings instead of spending.
In fact, Korea's overall savings rate hit the highest in 11 years last year, inching above the 35% mark. With that, experts project the BOK is expected to slash its 3% growth outlook for this year when it releases its new forecast next month. And the trim they add could point to more cuts in the key rate down the road that currently stands at a record low of 1.5%. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Well, if you're looking for things to do this weekend, here's a catch. This year marks 130 years of diplomatic ties between Korea and France, and to celebrate the long history of friendly relations, a wide variety of concerts, exhibitions, and performances are underway in Seoul, showcasing cultural treasures from the two countries. Our Oh Soo-young introduces us to some of these events. You have a wide selection to choose from, one that suits your palate, literally.
Korea and France are commemorating 130 years of diplomatic relations this year. And what could be a better way to celebrate this friendship than a ceremonial cutting of a baguette? The long-anticipated So French Deli Street Food Festival kicked off on Friday in central Seoul, co-hosted by the Korean government and the French embassy in Seoul. The two-day event invites all passers-by to sample bites of French dishes, pastries and snacks prepared by some of France's most celebrated chefs.
Amazing looking breads and desserts, yeah, really beautifully presented.
There's a couple of things that have got like a mixture of French and Korean elements to them, and yeah, it's really, really nice, really delicious.
Demonstrated through live cooking sessions, the chefs developed unique treats infusing classic menus from Korean and French cuisines.
Bulgogi brioche, it's a venture between French and Korean cuisine. So the texture are really different. You know, bulgogi is very tasty and that's meat, and the brioche is very, soft. So when you mix all together, the taste is very interesting and also the texture.
The festival offers just a small taste of the numerous events that opened this week, highlighting the best of Korean and French cultural assets. At the heart of Gwanghwamun Square, an installation art piece by world-famous designer Jean-Charles de Castelbajac embellishes the regal statue of King Sejong with a contemporary artistic design. And just a short walk away, an exhibition displays more than 120 snaps, capturing seemingly normal aspects of life in Seoul, magnified through the chromatic lens of a renowned French photographer, Françoise Huguier. There are even more cross-cultural sites to see and occasions to enjoy for the rest of the year as part of the France Year in Korea launched earlier this week in Seoul. Meanwhile, the Korea Year in France, which started in Paris last September, will run until the end of August. The two-part programme organised by both countries aims to encourage cultural exchanges and friendship between Korean and French nationals, without the need to travel from their homes. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Police in Brussels have arrested 7 people overnight and early this morning in their investigation of Tuesday's explosions that killed 31 people. Bruce Harrison is live in the studio with me. Now, Bruce, what or who are police looking for right now in Belgium?
Sure, around the city, Konyang, they're looking for anyone who may be connected to the attacks or any evidence that could help them in the investigation. According to media in Belgium, police arrested a man who was seen on surveillance footage in the Brussels airport next to 2 bombers who blew themselves up. Prosecutors have yet to confirm the arrest or if it was one of the 7 held in connection to the attacks. The raids took place in different parts of Brussels. They came quickly, and some residents were unable to get to their homes.
I was coming back from school and I found the entire area locked, so I couldn't get home. I asked and they said the police had to do some work here, but I don't know what's going on exactly.
Amid the investigation, Belgium's Interior and Justice ministers offered to resign over failing to track an Islamic State militant who blew himself up at the airport. The man had been expelled by Turkey as a suspected fighter.
Now, Bruce, the fear in Belgium extends far beyond its borders. In fact, neighboring countries are all on high alert right now. And in France, authorities have arrested a man suspected of plotting another attack.
Yeah, and this could have been a serious attack, apparently. The French government says that it was in an advanced stage when they made this arrest. The French Interior Minister said the arrest followed an important interrogation, and the suspect is a French national.
At this stage, no concrete evidence links this plot to the Paris or Brussels attacks. The investigation underway is expected to establish the nature of this criminal activity and its possible collaborators.
Investigators in Belgium believe the Islamist jihadist network involved in the Brussels attacks was involved in the November Paris attacks that killed 130 people. Belgian police have stressed the importance of cooperating with other governments.
Every day, we discover in the framework of what happened in Paris and in Brussels how important it is that our intelligence services, that our judicial services exchange all relevant information that is required.
In line with that, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is in Brussels now to meet with government officials as a sign of solidarity. Former Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic was sentenced to 40 years in jail by UN judges who found him guilty of genocide for the 1995 Srebrenica massacre and of 9 other war crime charges. The judges said Karadzic was criminally responsible for the siege of Sarajevo and committed crimes against humanity in Bosnian towns.
And that he failed in his duty as Supreme Commander to take necessary and reasonable measures to punish the commission of genocide, murder, extermination, and killings as an underlying act of persecution.
The judges said he intended to eliminate the Bosnian Muslim males in the town of Srebrenica, where 8,000 Muslims died in Europe's worst war crime since World War II.
Right, Bruce, this trial is highly significant because this conviction would, most likely, it will strengthen the international jurisprudence on the criminal responsibilities of political leaders who have committed atrocities under their rule, and we have, perhaps one nearby.
That's a great point, Kanyang. And he's one of several leaders who've now been persecuted at that international level. They're slowly chipping away at the leaders from this era. And like you said, there's many other individuals out there that they would like to persecute as well, and this strengthens their case.
All right. Well, thank you so much for today and all of this week. We'll see you Monday.
My pleasure.
Well, it was a bit breezy today, but cold conditions seem to have subsided. Let's head straight over to our Jihan at the Weather Center. Now, Jihan, I remember you told us that the southern parts of this country will be able to enjoy spring flowers in full bloom this weekend.
You're right on that, Kanyang. So traffic on the country's major highways is forecast to be quite congested this weekend. You will spend about an extra 1 hour on the road when heading to other cities.
Well, that could be worth it to see all those spring flowers in full bloom. How about the weather? Will it be nice enough for us to enjoy the long-awaited blooming, so to speak, outings?
Well, depends on where you are traveling to. Temperatures will ease starting tomorrow afternoon, and Sunday should be sunnier and milder with a high peaking to 15 degrees Celsius here in the capital, and there are a good amount of sunshine through the weekend. But if you plan to travel to the eastern or southern regions, including Daegu and Busan, you will have a mix of clouds and rain on Saturday, but things will get brightened up on Sunday across the nation. On that note, let's move on to tomorrow's temperature readings. Cold morning to start out, with a daily low here in Seoul starting out at 1 degree Celsius and -1 over in Daejeon, and Busan and Jeju will start out at 5 degrees Celsius. And afternoon highs, now milder daily highs in the forecast for the western parts, including here in Seoul, peaking to 13. But the eastern regions, including Daegu and Busan, will have slightly cooler highs due to mix of clouds and rain. On that note, now moving on to a 5-day forecast here in the capital. With April just around the corner, things will get only warmer by next week with pleasant spring-like conditions in the forecast. Now that's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
That is our broadcast on this fourth Friday of March. On this first West Sea Defense Day, we remember and honor men and women who have given their lives to defend this nation, those who serve, those who have served, and the families for their sacrifice so that we may continue to live in freedom. I'm Moon Ganyong. Thank you as always for staying with us. I hope you have a beautiful weekend, and we'll see you back same time Monday right here on NewsCenter.